The weight of success. Brandon Mitchell stood at the floor-to-ceiling window of his penthouse suite, watching the glittering lights of Manhattan stretch endlessly into the night. At 34, he had everything the world told him to want. His company, Next Wave Industries, had revolutionized cloud computing and made him a billionaire before he turned 30. The Wall Street Journal called him a visionary. Forbes put him on their cover. But tonight, surrounded by original Rothko paintings and furniture that cost more than most people's homes, he felt nothing but emptiness. His phone buzzed on the marble countertop. Another message from a woman he had met at a charity gala last week. She had seemed interested in him until she Googled his name in the restroom and returned with stars in her eyes and questions about his net worth. That had become the pattern of his life. Every conversation eventually turned to money. Every relationship reduced to a transaction. He picked up his phone and called the one person who remembered him before the money, before the fame, before the loneliness became unbearable. Tyler Reed answered on the second ring, his voice warm and familiar.
Amy.
"You are not calling me from another boring cocktail party," Tyler said with a laugh. "Worse, I am calling from my empty apartment, drinking scotch that costs more than your monthly rent, and wondering why success feels so much like failure," Brandon replied, unable to keep the bitterness from his voice. Tyler had been his roommate at Columbia, back when Brandon was building his first algorithms in their cramped dorm room and surviving on instant noodles. Now Tyler taught high school computer science in Brooklyn and seemed genuinely happy, something Brandon envied more than he cared to admit. The proposition actually. "I have been meaning to call you," Tyler said, his tone shifting to something more serious. "My girlfriend's best friend just moved back to the city. Rebecca Hayes. She is a muralist, does community art projects, volunteers at youth centers. She is the real deal, Brandon. Genuine, kind, passionate about making a difference. I told her about you, and she agreed to a blind date." Brandon felt a familiar cynicism rising. "Did you mention that I am Brandon Mitchell of Next Wave Industries?" "That is the thing," Tyler said carefully. "I may have been a bit vague about what you do. I told her you work in tech, which is not a lie. I just did not specify that you own the company." She does not follow business news, does not care about that world. She lives in a completely different universe. An idea began forming in Brandon's mind, dangerous and tempting. What if I kept it that way? What if she did not know who I really am? "Brandon, no. Do not even think about it. Just hear me out," Brandon said, pacing now, energy returning to his voice. "I could meet her as just Brandon. Not the CEO, not the billionaire. Just a regular guy, trying to make it in the city. No pretense, no performance. If she likes me, I will know it is real." "That is lying, man. That is not how you start something real. Is it any worse than the lies people tell me?" Brandon shot back. "The women who pretend to care about my interests, while calculating what kind of ring I can afford. At least this way, I will know the truth." Tyler sighed deeply. "If you do this, and she finds out, it will destroy any chance you have with her. Rebecca has been hurt before by people who are not honest. She values authenticity above everything, and I will make sure I am authentic in every way except one," Brandon insisted. "Come on, Tyler, help me with this. Let me just see what it feels like to be wanted for who I am, not what I have." After a long pause, Tyler relented. "Fine, but I am going on record saying this is a terrible idea. And you are using my car. That Tesla of yours would blow your cover in about 3 seconds." The meeting Friday evening arrived with a light rain that made the city streets shine like mirrors. Brandon borrowed Tyler's old Honda Civic and drove to the address Tyler had given him. A small diner in the East Village called Rosie's. He wore jeans, a simple button-down shirt, and sneakers that he had to buy specifically for this occasion since his usual wardrobe consisted entirely of custom suits and designer casual wear that cost thousands of dollars. His heart hammered as he walked into the diner. The smell of coffee and grilled cheese filled the air. Red vinyl booths lined the walls, and a jukebox in the corner played old soul music. It was the kind of place he never went to anymore, the kind of place he had loved in college. He spotted her immediately. Rebecca Hayes sat in a corner booth, her dark hair pulled back in a loose ponytail, wearing a paint-splattered denim jacket over a simple dress. She was sketching something in a notebook, completely absorbed in her work. When she looked up and saw him, her smile was warm and unpracticed. "Brandon?" she asked, standing to greet him. "Rebecca. It is great to meet you," he said, shaking her hand. Her grip was firm, her hands marked with traces of paint that no amount of washing could completely remove. They slid into the booth, and an older waitress with kind eyes brought them menus. Brandon realized he had not looked at a menu with prices this reasonable in years. Everything was under $15. Rebecca ordered coffee and a grilled cheese. He ordered the same, not because he wanted it, but because it felt right for who he was pretending to be. "So Tyler tells me you work in tech," Rebecca said, her eyes curious but not prying. "What do you do exactly?" "I am a photographer," Brandon said, using the cover story he had prepared. "Freelance. I do some corporate work, headshots, that kind of thing. It pays the bills while I work on my personal projects." It was not a complete lie. He had loved photography in college before Next Wave consumed his life. He still owned his old Canon, though it had been years since he picked it up. "That is wonderful," Rebecca said, and he could tell she meant it. "I always admire people who find ways to keep their art alive while navigating the practical realities of life. It is such a balance." Genuine connection, the conversation flowed easily. She told him about her work creating murals in underserved neighborhoods, how she believed art could transform communities and give young people a sense of pride in their surroundings. She spoke about her dream of opening a community art center, where kids could take free classes and discover their own creativity. "The problem is funding," she said with a rueful smile. "I have been applying for grants, but there is so much competition, and rent in this city is insane. Sometimes I wonder if I should just move somewhere cheaper, but New York is home, you know." Brandon listened, fascinated. When was the last time someone had shared their dreams with him without asking for investment capital? When had anyone talked to him about passion instead of profit margins? "What about you?" she asked. "What do you love to photograph?" He found himself talking about the city at dawn, the way light transformed ordinary streets into something magical. He talked about capturing moments of human connection, the small interactions that revealed deeper truths. As he spoke, he realized how much he missed this version of himself. The version that existed before wealth had built walls around his life. They talked for 3 hours. The coffee turned cold, and they ordered more. The diner filled and emptied around them, but they barely noticed. Rebecca showed him sketches in her notebook, ideas for murals that incorporated local history and culture. He found himself pulling out his phone to show her some old photographs he had taken in college, images he had not looked at in years. "These are beautiful," she said softly, studying a photo of a subway musician. "You have a real eye for finding dignity in everyday moments." Her words touched something deep inside him. No one had complimented his eye in years. They complimented his business acumen, his market timing, his ability to scale operations. But this was about him, about something he had created with his own hands and vision. When they finally left the diner, the rain had stopped. The streets were slick and reflective, the city humming with Friday night energy. They stood on the sidewalk, neither quite ready to say goodbye. "I had a really great time," Rebecca said. "This felt real, you know? Not like a performance." "I know exactly what you mean," Brandon replied, guilt stirring in his chest even as joy filled it. "Can I see you again? I would like that." She smiled and handed him a card with her phone number written in neat handwriting. "Text me. Maybe we can check out that photography exhibit at the Whitney." As he watched her walk toward the subway station, Brandon felt something he had not felt in years: hope. But beneath it lurked the knowledge that he had built this connection on a foundation of deception. He told himself it was a small lie, a necessary one. He told himself he would make it right eventually. He did not yet understand that some lies, no matter how small they seem, can shatter everything. The double life the following Saturday morning arrived bright and clear. One of those perfect autumn days when New York seemed to shed its hard edges. Brandon met Rebecca at the entrance to the Brooklyn Street Art Festival in Williamsburg. She wore paint-stained overalls and a white t-shirt. her hair braided to one side, looking more beautiful than any woman he had ever seen in designer gowns at charity galas. "Ready to see some real art?" she asked, her eyes sparkling with excitement. They wandered through streets transformed into open-air galleries. Murals covered every available surface, explosions of color and meaning that told stories of struggle, hope, community, and resistance. Rebecca moved through the space like she was walking through a sacred temple, stopping to examine technique, pointing out symbolism, explaining the political and social context behind each piece. "This is what I love about street art," she said. Standing before a massive mural of a young girl releasing butterflies, it is not locked away in galleries where only wealthy people can see it. It belongs to everyone. It transforms the neighborhood, gives people beauty in their daily lives. Brandon found himself seeing the city through her eyes. He had driven past street art 1,000 times in his chauffeured car, never really looking at it, dismissing it as graffiti. Now he saw the skill, the passion, the messages of hope painted on walls in communities that needed hope most. They stopped at a food truck selling tacos, sitting on a curb to eat like they were teenagers instead of adults, navigating complicated lives. Brandon wore the same borrowed clothes from Tyler's closet, had taken a cab instead of calling his driver, and had left his Rolex at home, placing it with a cheap watch from a drugstore. Every detail of his disguise felt like another brick in a wall he was building between them. "Tell me something real about you," Rebecca said suddenly, wiping hot sauce from her chin. "Something you do not tell most people." The request caught him off guard. Everything about their relationship was built on things he was not telling her. But he found himself speaking from a place of genuine truth. "I feel invisible most of the time," he said quietly. "People see what they expect to see, what they want from me. But the actual person underneath, my real thoughts and feelings, nobody seems interested in that. Does that make sense?" Rebecca studied his face with such intensity that he almost looked away. "It makes perfect sense. I think a lot of us feel that way. We become what other people need us to be, and we lose ourselves in the process. But I see you, Brandon. I see someone who is thoughtful and observant and a little bit sad. Someone who is searching for something real." Her words pierced through all his defenses. She saw him, truly saw him, but she was seeing a version that did not fully exist. The irony was almost unbearable. The dream and the reality as they walked through McCarran Park. Rebecca opened up about her vision for the community art center. Her face became animated, hands gesturing as she described classrooms where kids could learn painting, sculpture, digital art, photography. A space where local artists could exhibit their work, where the community could gather for free events. "I have found a perfect location," she said, pulling out her phone to show him pictures. "It is an old warehouse in Bed-Stuy, been empty for years. The owner is willing to rent it cheap if I can prove I will actually use it for community benefit. But even cheap rent in New York is expensive, you know? I need about $30,000 for the first year to cover rent, supplies, insurance, everything. I have saved $8,000 so far." Brandon's mind immediately went to his bank account. He could write a check for $30,000 and not even notice it missing. He could buy the building outright and give it to her. He could fund her dream for the next 20 years without it affecting his lifestyle at all. But Brandon Walsh, freelance photographer, could not do any of those things. "Have you tried crowdfunding?" he asked, the words tasting like ash in his mouth. "Maybe social media campaigns to raise awareness." "Yeah, I am working on it," she said with determined optimism. "I believe in this dream enough to be patient. Good things take time, right?" He nodded, feeling like the worst kind of fraud. Here was a woman willing to work and wait and sacrifice for something that mattered. While he lived in luxury and pretended to understand struggle, the close call they decided to grab coffee at a small cafe in Soho. As they stood in line, Brandon froze. Walking toward them on the sidewalk was Jonathan Hughes, the CFO of a company NextWave had just acquired. Jonathan had been at Brandon's office just 3 days ago, presenting integration plans. "Can you grab us a table?" Brandon said quickly to Rebecca. "I need to make a phone call." He ducked outside, turning his back to the street, phone pressed to his ear in a fake conversation. Through the window, he watched Jonathan walk past, talking on his own phone, not looking into the cafe. Brandon's heart hammered against his ribs. That had been too close. When he returned inside, Rebecca had found a corner table. "Everything okay? You look pale." "Yeah, just some client drama," he lied, adding another brick to the wall. "Nothing serious." They talked for another hour, and Brandon found himself relaxing again, drawn back into the ease of their connection. She told him about growing up in Seattle, about her mother who taught elementary school, and her father who had been a carpenter. She spoke about them with such love and respect, about values they had instilled in her about integrity and hard work and treating everyone with dignity. "My dad used to say that character is who you are when nobody is watching," she said, stirring her coffee. "He said you could judge a person's true nature by how they treat people who can do nothing for them." The words hit Brandon like a physical blow. By that measure, what did his deception say about his character? The Kisa's evening approached. They walked through Washington Square Park. Street musicians played. Students sat on benches studying. Chess players hunched over their games. The autumn sun slanted through the trees. Painting everything gold, they sat on the edge of the fountain, and Rebecca turned to him with a soft smile. "I have had such a good day. Thank you for this." "Thank you," Brandon said, "for showing me your world, for helping me see things differently." She leaned closer, and he could smell paint and coffee and something floral in her hair. "Can I tell you something that might sound crazy, since we have only known each other a week?" "Please. I feel like I can be myself around you. Completely myself. No performance, no pretending to be someone I am not. That is so rare." She laughed softly. "Listen to me," getting all serious. Brandon felt emotion rising in his throat. "I feel the same way," he said, and it was true, even though the irony was devastating. With her, despite his lies, he felt more like himself than he had in years. She kissed him then, gently at first, then deeper. It was a kiss that tasted like hope and promise and all the things he wanted his life to be. It was also a kiss built on deception, and that knowledge sat heavy in his chest, even as joy flooded through him. When they pulled apart, she rested her forehead against his. "This is real, right? This thing between us?" "It is real," he said, meaning it with everything in him, even as the lie threatened to destroy it all. The unraveling begins over the next 2 weeks. Brandon lived a double life that was slowly tearing him apart. By day, he was Brandon Mitchell, CEO, attending board meetings, making decisions that affected thousands of employees, negotiating deals worth hundreds of millions. He wore custom suits, rode in his private car, lived in his penthouse fortress. By evening and on weekends, he transformed into Brandon Walsh, struggling photographer. He borrowed Tyler's clothes and car, met Rebecca at casual restaurants, walked through neighborhoods instead of being driven. With her, he explored parts of the city he had forgotten existed, saw life from street level instead of from behind tinted windows. The strain was showing. His assistant noticed his distraction. His board members questioned his recent lack of focus, but he could not stop. Every moment with Rebecca felt like drinking water after years in a desert. She invited him to her studio, apartment in Bushwick, one evening. It was a tiny space, maybe 400 square feet, with a Murphy bed and a kitchenette. But she had transformed it into something magical. Her artwork covered the walls, plants filled every available surface, and string lights created a warm glow. "Sorry, it is so small," she said, a hint of embarrassment in her voice. "The rent is still too high, but it is mine, you know." Brandon looked around at the space that could fit into his walk-in closet back home and felt a pang of something he could not quite name. She had created more warmth and life in this tiny apartment than existed in his entire penthouse. They cooked dinner together, pasta with vegetables from the farmer's market. She played music from her phone, and they danced in the small space between the kitchen and the bed. She fit perfectly in his arms. And he thought about how money could buy everything except this, except genuine connection, except the feeling of being valued for who you actually were. "What are you thinking about?" she asked, looking up at him. "About how happy I am right now," he said truthfully. "About how I have not felt this way in a very long time."
Me too.
She smiled. "You know what I love about you? You are content with simple things. So many people in this city are always chasing more, more, more. But you seem grateful for what you have." Each word was a knife. She loved him for qualities he did not possess, for a life he did not actually live. He was the embodiment of everything she was talking about, the person always chasing more. But he had disguised himself so well that she saw the opposite. The gathering storm. Tyler called him one morning, his voice tight with stress. "We need to talk. Rebecca is coming to dinner at our place Friday night, and she assumes you are coming too. Emma is asking questions. Brandon. She knows something is off." "What did you tell her?" "Nothing yet, but I am not going to lie to my girlfriend for you. This has gone too far. You need to tell Rebecca the truth." "I will," Brandon said. "I just need to find the right moment." "There is no right moment for this kind of truth," Tyler replied. "Every day you wait makes it worse." Brandon knew his friend was right, but the thought of losing Rebecca paralyzed him. He had fallen completely, irrevocably in love with her. She had become the center of his world, the reason he looked forward to each day. The thought of seeing disappointment and betrayal in her eyes was unbearable. Friday evening arrived too quickly. Brandon drove to Tyler's apartment in Brooklyn, his stomach churning with anxiety. Tyler and his girlfriend Emma lived in a modest two-bedroom. Warm and cluttered in the way homes filled with love always were, Rebecca was already there when he arrived, helping Emma in the kitchen. She lit up when she saw him, crossing the room to kiss him hello. "I have been telling Emma about your photography. She wants to see your portfolio." Brandon felt ice in his veins. "It is not really ready to show yet. I am doing some updates." "Come on, do not be modest," Emma said warmly. "I bet your work is amazing." The evening proceeded with Brandon feeling like he was walking through a minefield. Every conversation topic felt dangerous. They talked about rent prices, and he had to pretend to care about increases that would not affect his real life at all. They discussed weekend plans, and he had to decline Rebecca's invitation to a free concert because he actually had a speaking engagement at a tech conference. "You work a lot for a freelancer," Emma observed, her tone just slightly suspicious. "Bills to pay," Brandon said with a shrug that felt wooden. After dinner, they moved to the living room. Tyler turned on the news while Emma made coffee. The anchor was discussing recent tech industry developments. And suddenly, there was Brandon's face on the screen. Footage from a recent press conference. Nextwave Industries CEO Brandon Mitchell announced today that his company would be expanding operations to include. Brandon lunged for the remote. Changing the channel so fast, it looked suspicious. Everyone stared at him. "Sorry," he said, heart pounding. That tech news stuff bores me." Rebecca gave him an odd look but did not say anything. But the moment had shifted something. The evening wrapped up shortly after. Tension humming beneath polite goodbyes. The confession. Brandon sat in his car outside Rebecca's apartment building. The engine off, hands gripping the steering wheel until his knuckles turned white. It had been 3 days since the dinner at Tyler's, and something had changed. Rebecca's texts had become shorter, less frequent. She had canceled their plans twice with vague excuses about work commitments. She knew, or she suspected. Either way, the walls were closing in. His phone buzzed with a text from her. "Can we talk tonight? Come over around 8. Those 4 words filled him with dread. The way someone said, "We need to talk," told you everything. This was not going to be a romantic evening. This was going to be a reckoning. He spent the day at the office unable to focus, snapping at his assistant, leaving a board meeting early. Nothing mattered except the conversation that was coming. Finally, at 7:30, he changed out of his suit in his office bathroom, putting on the borrowed clothes that had become his costume. But this time, the transformation felt different. He was not becoming someone else. He was preparing to stop pretending. He arrived at her building at exactly 8 o'clock. The buzzer sounded harsh in the quiet evening. She let him up without saying anything through the intercom. When she opened the door, he knew immediately that his worst fears were confirmed. Her eyes were red from crying, her face set in an expression he had never seen before. Not anger exactly, but something worse. Disappointment. Betrayal. "Come in," she said quietly, stepping aside. Her laptop was open on the small kitchen table. On the screen was an article from TechCrunch with his photo. Brandon Mitchell, the reclusive billionaire behind Next Wave Industries. Brandon felt the floor drop away beneath him. Rebecca, I can explain. Can you? Her voice was eerily calm. Because I have been trying to understand this for the past 2 days, ever since Emma sent me this article. She recognized you from that news clip. Did you really think you could keep this secret forever? No, I knew I would have to tell you. I just could not find the right moment. The right moment. Now anger crept into her voice. How about the first moment? How about when we met? Hi, I am Brandon Mitchell. I am a billionaire pretending to be poor to test whether you are a gold digger. Would that have been a good moment? The words struck him like physical blows. Hearing her say it out loud made him realize how cruel his deception had been. It was not like that, he started, but she cut him off. Then what was it like? Explain it to me. She crossed her arms, tears streaming down her face now. Explain why you lied to me every single day for a month. Why you let me talk about my money problems, my struggles to fund my dream. While you could probably buy this entire building with pocket change. Explain why you let me fall in love with someone who does not even exist. Brandon Walsh does exist, he said desperately. That person you got to know, that was me. The real me, the person I used to be before money changed everything. With you, I could be that person again.
No.
She shook her head firmly. That person was a character you played. The real you is someone who thinks it is okay to manipulate people for your own purposes. The real you is someone who turned our entire relationship into a social experiment. That is not fair. I fell in love with you. Everything I felt was real. Was it? She laughed bitterly. Because from where I am standing, you treated me like a lab rat. You watched me struggle, watched me worry about money, about my dream, about my future, all while knowing you could solve every problem I have with a single phone call. And you said nothing. Do you know how that makes me feel? Used. Stupid. Like the whole thing was some elaborate joke. Brandon moved toward her, but she held up a hand to stop him. Do not touch me, please. Just let me explain why I did it. Fine. She sat down heavily on her small couch. Explain. He sat across from her, maintaining the distance she clearly needed. Every relationship I have had for the past 5 years has been about money. Women who researched my net worth before our first date. Women who asked what I could do for their careers, their businesses, their families. I never knew if anyone actually liked me or just what I represented. It was lonely in a way I cannot describe. So you thought lying to me was the solution? Her voice dripped with sarcasm. You thought starting a relationship based on deception would somehow be more genuine? I thought if you did not know about the money, if you could just get to know me as a person, then I would know what you felt was real. And it worked, Rebecca. What we had was real. You fell for me, not for my bank account. I fell for a fiction. She wiped her eyes. I fell for Brandon Walsh, a struggling photographer who understood what it meant to work hard for your dreams. I fell for someone who seemed humble and genuine and content with a simple life. That person is not you, Brandon. You live in a world I cannot even imagine. You probably spent more on whatever watch you are hiding in your car than I make in a year. The accuracy of her guess made him wince. His Patek Philippe was worth more than she made in 3 years. You were right about the watch, he admitted, and the car, and the apartment, and everything else. But you are wrong about one thing. The person who sat with you in that diner, who walked through the street art festival, outdanced with you in this apartment, that was me. The truest version of myself I have been able to be in years. Built on lies, she said softly. What kind of foundation is that? They sat in silence for a long moment. Outside, the sounds of the city filtered through the thin walls. A siren wailed. Someone laughed on the street below. Life continued while his world fell apart. I am sorry, he said finally. I am so deeply sorry for hurting you. You are right about everything. I was selfish and cruel, and I do not deserve your forgiveness. But please know that loving you was the most real thing I have felt in my entire adult life. Rebecca stood up, wrapping her arms around herself. I need you to leave now. Can we talk about this more? Can I see you tomorrow? No, Brandon. I need time to process this. And honestly, I do not know if there is anything left to talk about. You broke my trust in the most fundamental way possible. He stood, moving toward the door. At the threshold, he turned back. For what it is worth, you were right when you said I seem sad. I have been sad for years. Until I met you, you made me remember what it feels like to be happy. That just makes this worse, she whispered, because you made me happy too. And now, I do not know if any of it was real. The long night Brandon drove through the city for hours that night, unable to face his empty penthouse. He thought about everything Rebecca had said, about the character he had played and the person he actually was. The worst part was that she was right. He had turned their relationship into an experiment, her feelings into data to be analyzed. He ended up parked outside the warehouse she had shown him in pictures, the space where she dreamed of building her community art center. It was in a rough neighborhood, the building clearly neglected. But he could see what she saw: potential, possibility, a place where beauty and hope could flourish. On impulse, he called his lawyer, waking her up at 2 a.m. I need you to research a property for me, he said, reading off the address. Find out who owns it, what they want for it, everything. Can this wait until morning? His lawyer asked groggily. No, it cannot. By sunrise, he had the information. The building was owned by a real estate investment trust that had been trying to unload it for years. The neighborhood was not attractive to developers yet, and the building needed extensive renovations. They were asking $200,000, but his lawyer said they would probably take $150,000. Brandon made an offer that morning. $175,000, cash, closing in 2 weeks. The offer was accepted within hours. He called Tyler next. I bought Rebecca's building, the one she wanted for the art center. There was a long silence. Please tell me you are not planning to give it to her. Why not? It is what she needs. Because it will look like you are trying to buy her forgiveness, Tyler said bluntly. Because it will confirm every fear she has about your money corrupting things. You cannot fix a broken relationship with a grand gesture, Brandon. Then what do I do? Just let her struggle when I have the means to help. You respect her enough to give her space. You respect her enough to let her achieve her dreams on her own terms. The best thing you can do right now is leave her alone. Tyler was right, but the advice felt impossible to follow. Every instinct in Brandon's body screamed at him to fix things, to use his resources to solve the problem. That was what he did. That was who he was. But maybe that was exactly the problem. The anonymous gift 2 weeks passed with no contact from Rebecca. Brandon threw himself into work, but it brought no satisfaction. He attended meetings, made decisions, signed contracts, all while feeling like he was watching his life from outside his body. The closing on the warehouse happened on a Tuesday. Brandon structured the purchase through a shell company, ensuring Rebecca would never know he was behind it. Then, he had his lawyer draft a letter to be delivered to her from a fictitious foundation, the letter explained. That she had been selected as a recipient of the Community Arts Initiative grant. The foundation had purchased the warehouse and would lease it to her for $1 per year for the next 20 years. With funds provided for renovations and startup costs, it was completely anonymous, completely untraceable, and it solved her biggest problem without her ever knowing he was involved. This is insane, his lawyer said when he explained the plan. You are giving her close to $500,000 in property and renovations, and you do not even want credit for it. That is exactly right. Why? Because she was right about me, Brandon said quietly. I treated her like an experiment. I made everything about me, about my needs, about testing her character while never questioning my own. This is not about me. This is about her dream, her work, her community. If my money can help with that, it should. But I have done enough damage to her personally. This way, she gets what she needs, and I do not make things worse. The lawyer looked at him with something like respect. You really love her, more than I knew I could love anyone. The unexpected encounter 3 weeks after their breakup, Brandon found himself walking through Central Park on a Sunday morning. He had been avoiding the places they used to go together, but today he needed air. Needed to remember what it felt like to be part of the world instead of sealed away from it. He was watching a street musician play violin when he heard her voice. Brandon, he turned. Rebecca stood a few feet away, wearing the same paint-stained overalls he remembered from their second date. But something was different. The anger in her eyes had softened to something more complex. Hurt still, but also curiosity. Rebecca high, his heart hammered against his ribs. "How are you?" Confused, she said honestly, "Can we walk?" They fell into step together, maintaining a careful distance. For several minutes, neither spoke. Finally, Rebecca broke the silence. "Got a letter 3 days ago. From something called the Community Arts Initiative Foundation. They are giving me the warehouse, Brandon. All of it. Lease for 20 years at $1 per year, plus renovation funding, operating budget, everything I need to make the art center real." Brandon kept his expression neutral. "That is incredible. Congratulations. Is it you?" She stopped walking, turning to face him. "Did you do this?" He had prepared for this question, had his answer ready. He could lie again, could protect the anonymity he had worked so hard to create. But he looked into her eyes and knew he could not lie to her again. Would not? Yes. She closed her eyes, and he could not tell if it was in relief or frustration. Why? Because your dream is important. Because that community needs what you want to build. Because I have more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes, and it should do some good in the world. And because I love you, and even though I cannot be with you, I want you to be happy. You should have asked me first.
I know.
But if I had asked, you would have said no. And your pride would have cost that community something beautiful. She started walking again, and he followed. They walked for a long time without speaking, processing the weight of what had been said. "I have been thinking a lot," Rebecca finally said. "About what you did? About why you did it? Emma thinks I should never speak to you again. Tyler thinks I should at least hear you out. What do you think?" "I think you hurt me terribly. I think your deception was cruel, and I do not know if I can ever fully trust you again." She stopped, looking out at the lake. "But I also think I understand why you did it. Loneliness makes people do desperate things. And maybe, in some twisted way, you were trying to protect yourself from getting hurt. That does not excuse it." "No, it does not." She turned to him. "But maybe it explains it. And maybe explanation is a place to start." Hope flared in Brandon's chest, dangerous and bright. "Start what?" "I do not know yet," she admitted. "I am still angry. I am still hurt. But I miss you, Brandon. Both versions of you. The photographer who saw beauty in small moments, and the CEO who just gave away $500,000 to make a stranger's dream come true. You are not a stranger. I feel like one sometimes. How do I even begin to understand your world? The money, the power, the pressure you must be under all the time? How do I understand yours?" He countered. "The art, the passion for community, the ability to see value in things everyone else overlooks. We are from different worlds, Rebecca, but that does not mean we cannot build a bridge between them." She smiled sadly. "That is a nice metaphor, but bridges take time to build. I have time. I have all the time you need." They sat on a bench overlooking the water. The autumn sun felt warm on Brandon's face. He did not reach for her hand, did not try to kiss her. This moment was not about grand gestures. It was about being present, being honest, being patient. "If we try this again," Rebecca said slowly, "it has to be real. No more secrets, no more lies. I need to see all of you, the penthouse and the board meetings and the life you actually live. And you need to see all of me, not just the parts that fit into your romantic fantasy. I want that. I want to know everything about you." "It is going to be messy," she warned. "We are going to have to navigate how different our lives are. People are going to judge me, probably. Say I am with you for your money. Let them talk. I know the truth, do you?" She looked at him intently. "Because I am not sure I even know the truth yet. I fell in love with Brandon Walsh. I am not sure how I feel about Brandon Mitchell yet." "Then let me introduce you to him," Brandon said softly. "The real version, flaws and all. The guy who works too much and does not know how to relax, who grew up middle class in New Jersey and sometimes still feels like an imposter in his own life, who built a company because he loved solving problems but lost himself somewhere along the way in the success, who has been lonely for so long he forgot what connection felt like. Until he met you. Tears welled in Rebecca's eyes. See, that is the problem. When you talk like that, I remember why I fell for you. But then I remember the lies, and I do not know which feeling to trust. Trust the anger, Brandon said. Trust the hurt. Those feelings are valid, and I earned them. But maybe eventually you can also trust that I am trying to be better, that I learned something from losing you. What did you learn? That love is not about control or testing or protecting yourself from being hurt. It is about being vulnerable enough to be truly seen. You saw me, Rebecca. Even through my disguise, you saw the real me. And I was too scared to let you see all of it. I will not make that mistake again.